Dr. Callum Parr. Dr. Parr, very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
How close were you to getting an agreement this time round?
So we put the offer that Wes Streeting put to us, to our members. That was pretty soundly rejected. So we got a 65% turnout in just 72 hours, and 83% of our members, so 30,000 frontline resident doctors, rejected that offer. So sadly, we think we still have a way to go. We are willing to have those conversations, but sadly, we haven't been able to come to a resolution yet that will settle our jobs and pay disputes.
As you said, it was quite a resounding vote, both on turnout and the vote itself. In the lead up to that, both the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister were often using rhetoric to say to resident doctors directly, ignore your BMA leadership and vote in favour of this offer. Were you disappointed by that rhetoric, and what did this vote show the government?
I think the rhetoric is really unhelpful. So the resident doctors stood behind me in bright orange, work day and night for our NHS. They are the first people to see you on the ward when your heart stops, or to perform life-saving surgeries overnight. They run the hospitals overnight. So I think that sort of rhetoric is really unhelpful, and I hope we don't see any more going forwards. I think what this vote shows is that what we told the government in the room, that we needed pay and we needed to go further on jobs to get rid of this ridiculous crisis where we're turning away 30,000 doctors this year away from specialty training places. Hopefully now they can see that all the resident doctors that stood behind me agree with us, and hopefully this moves them closer to putting forward an offer that can resolve this dispute.
Clearly, job training and opportunities is one part and pay is another. They did move to offer quite a lot more late last week on the training and opportunities part. Was that, in that bucket, sufficient or not?
I don't think so. So what we saw was 4,000 repurposed jobs. So these are jobs that already exist in our NHS. Doctors are already in them, and they are sort of just renaming those jobs. So we would see no increase overall in the number of resident doctors on the wards, which means that patients won't get seen any quicker on the ward round, and importantly, the waiting times in A&E and to see your GP won't go down. So we think we need to go further on that front. So while there's been some progress, it won't mean that the rotas that I work on are any better staffed, and I will still be worried that when I turn up to work, if one person calls in sick, I'll be doing the work of 2 doctors. And I think that is something that is shared by all the people behind me.
On pay, I mean, there's so many nuances to it. You want to date back to just after the financial crisis, and understandably can make the argument that the pay increases you've seen haven't matched inflation since then. But I think it's also fair to point that very, very few jobs in very few industries have. You have had significant pay increases over the last 2 years, and the country's finances are wildly under pressure. Can you understand those points that I think a lot of people feel when they make them to you, as to now is not the right time to be pushing for an extra pay increase?
If now's not the time, I don't know when is. We're seeing resident doctors leaving all the time. So the General Medical Council received more applications last year from doctors to leave our NHS for other countries than in the last decade. This is a crisis that is happening now. When we look at pay uplifts that we've had over the last few years, when you take out that massive inflation that we had over that period of time, it comes to around 2 or 3% per year. The reality is that as a doctor now standing in front of you, I am paid over 20% less than a doctor doing the same job that I did in 2008, and that is really felt by me and the doctors behind me in my pockets. So, you know, I've got £120,000 of student debt that I'm paying off. I've been a full-time doctor working up to 72 hours since I graduated over 3 years ago, and my student loans have gone up by £7,000. So in that context, people are really feeling it, and so we need to address that now so we don't lose doctors more.
I totally get that, Dr. Parr, when you talk about real pay increases compared to 2008. But do you also accept that the average junior doctor, resident doctor, has got a nearly 30% pay increase in nominal terms over the last few years, and that very few people watching this programme will have got anything close to that nominal increase, regardless of what inflation has been in recent years?
Well, there are two things. In terms of the nominal increase, doctors are still paying more with inflation for everything, including their student loans, their rent, their food. Prices are not cheaper for resident doctors than they are for anyone else.
Forgive me, Dr. Parr. So is everyone in this country. Everyone's costs have gone up, whatever those costs might be. I'm just using the simple point. You've made the legitimate long-term point. In the short term, do you accept that resident doctors have had a far bigger nominal pay increase than the vast majority of people watching this programme?
So I recognise that our pay has gone up maybe more than other public sector workers, but that is on the background of having larger cuts than anyone else in the public or private sectors. And as I said, our pay is still down over a fifth on 2008. Doctors are leaving for that reason. We don't think that we can afford not to pay our doctors because our NHS needs them. We need them to bring down the waiting lists and waiting times. We're turning away 13 A&E doctors for every one post. We need to get doctors into jobs, but importantly, we need to keep them here. If we're not going to pay our doctors what they're worth, they will leave, and we are seeing that. The government should do something about it, and I think your viewers would want them to do something about that.
Dr. Parr, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.